try and summarize it as best as I can. We're going to give you some statistics because I think it's important to really highlight how big of a problem this is, give you some resources, talk about some of our areas of concern, and then hopefully have you leaving here at the end of the night feeling a little better about some things that you can do, whether it's your kids, your grandkids, if you're a caregiver to children, or just a friend, right? To be able to look out for some of these things that we've had some concerns about for quite some time. Now, I know some of you are not from Ohio, but Ohio's problem is really no different than any of the other problems that we are seeing, not only domestically, but also on an international scale. I have the privilege of serving as the statewide commander for a program known as the Ohio Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force. And here in Ohio, we are one of 61 federally funded task forces that are spread throughout the United States. And so um, some states have more than one ICAC. Texas has three, Florida has three, California has five. Some areas have one just to cover one city. So New York Police Department covers the entire five boroughs. Los Angeles County is covered by the Los Angeles Police Department. I say that because all of us, all 61 of these task force programs, have seen just a dramatic rise in this type of crime over the last 10 years. And we measure a lot of the problem by what we call cyber tips. So cyber tips come to us from the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. They come from the public, they come from other law enforcement agencies, but the majority of them come from companies like Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok. Years ago, Congress mandated that companies that become aware of terms of service violations involving child exploitation have to report those instances to the National Center. And what's interesting is that when I started working for the county prosecutor in 2009, we received 649 tips that year alone. 649. We get about 649 tips every 2 or 3 weeks now here in the state of Ohio. And you can see from this graph just the epidemic that has been created by online child exploitation. Because the reality is about 98% of these tips, of the 43,347 tips we got last year, about 98% of them deal solely with child sexual abuse material, child exploitation material. Now, you know it better as child pornography, but we are trying to move away from that terminology because it trivializes the reality of this crime. Children who are being sexually abused, children who are being raped, continually exploited over and over again. So we expect 2026 to continue to be just a huge year in terms of these tips. We're already at 5,000. So we've crested 2016, 2017, and in the next week or so, we will have received more tips than we did in 2018 for the entire year. Why is that happening? Well, companies are getting better about reporting, right? But we're also seeing more and more younger kids who are getting online. And because of that, we're seeing more offenders who recognize that it's an easy place to begin that victimization. When you consider that even though the federal age is 13, from our conversations with kids in middle school and even elementary school, we're finding that kids are getting online a lot younger than they should be. Now, in terms of the overall picture, right, I gave you Ohio's problem, and, Ohio is fairly similar to a lot of the other states that are out there. When you look at it from a national or even international standpoint, it becomes an even bigger problem. 225 million cyber tips have been generated since the late 90s. When Congress first started mandating cyber tips, the National Center has been keeping track of all of that data regarding the instances or the incidents that you see here on the screen. Okay. You see these weekly numbers. concerning. Obviously, from an overall standpoint, however, it really paints a great picture of what we need to focus our efforts on. Uh, the two biggest categories that you see there, and again, child pornography continues to proliferate. 221 of the 225 million tips relate to at least one file of child sexual abuse material. So we're talking images or videos that depict children in a state of nudity or engaged in a sex act. Part of that increase, obviously, is offenders who are preying on children, but there's also a big portion of that number, and we'll talk about this a little bit later, that is created by what we call self-generated child sexual abuse material. So children who are sexting, children who are acting irresponsible. That contributes to the overall number of images and videos that we see online. And it obviously creates concern for us because then we have to go out, kind of step away from our efforts to identify offenders and sort of put on a parent hat for a second, if you will, to try and figure out the best way to approach a situation that is not always criminal. The other problem is you see there online enticement of children. So we're going to talk later about some sexting and sextortion. We're going to talk about some of the sadistic groups that are operating in some of these spaces. Those folks, those offenders have contributed to this massive increase because no category has increased quicker than online enticement of children for sex acts. We saw a 192% increase in those crimes from 2023 to 2024. Some of that is due to new congressional laws that are requiring companies to report online enticement more specifically. But these are the numbers on the left here with regards to some of the 2024 data. And again, we're still seeing record numbers in the child pornography category. We're seeing those huge numbers in the online enticements because, again, you have more offenders coming online and you have more kids who are falling victim to some of the newer things like sextortion and some AI-generated deepfakes, which we'll talk about briefly as well. But I also want you to pay attention to that number at the top there. 62.9 million is the number of files, so images, videos, that are contained within cyber tip line reports in 2024. So when you look at that 19 million number of tips, those 19.8 million tips contained 62.9 million files of child sexual abuse material. And so it really has our work cut out for us because, again, as a law enforcement officer, one of my main focuses is to go out and identify, arrest offenders, and prosecute. But on the other side of the coin, we have to be aware of all of the victims that still need to be identified. So victim identification becomes an important part of the work that we do. Because in that 62 million, there are a lot of files of children who we either have not identified yet, who in some cases may still be victimized, they may be still in a situation where they need rescuing, or we still have to go out and interact with those kids if we can identify something about them and see if they're in harm's way, or get their information into the National Center so that we can get them some resources and get them some help from a victim standpoint. Now, these two rooms look fairly nice, but when I talk to parents, caregivers, grandparents, these are the rooms in your house that are probably the most dangerous if you have children with technology. And I say that because these are your rooms that have a lock on the door. These are the rooms where your children expect, in some cases, privacy, and they deserve it. But when you mix technology with the bathroom, when you mix technology with the bedroom, 8 times out of 10, we have seen this is where a lot of the problems are occurring. I have some belief that, there may be a time where a kid needs to use their device in their bedroom. Maybe they're doing some homework. Maybe they just need some quiet time. But you'll never find me agreeing that the phone, the tablet, the laptop belongs in the bathroom. I have seen too many images and videos created where children are in the bathroom, they're behind a locked door, maybe the shower's running, maybe they tell parents they're using the bathroom, and then we are seeing material that is created. And I think we can all appreciate that it only takes 5 seconds to take a nude photo. It only takes 30 seconds to have a conversation with someone that you don't know where you're giving out information. And so while I expect that you would afford your child, your grandchild, some privacy, it's a slippery slope with regards to just how quickly some of these crimes occur. And we'll talk later, obviously, about the problem of sextortion. And that's where we really have seen the biggest concern in the last 2 or 3 years. Now, I've talked a lot about the problem in a short time. So, how do we prepare for it, right? As parents, grandparents, caregivers, okay? So, a few questions that I want you to ask yourself either tonight or moving forward, okay? Do you know where your kids are online, right? There's no question that we are kind of technologically behind the curve as parents, right? I have worked internet crimes against children for 22 years now. And yet there are still days where I look at the new apps, the new devices, the new gaming systems that are coming out, and I struggle to make sense of them. It took a long time for me to adopt to TikTok. And I still, to this day, am not a big fan of social media. But when you hand your child a device for the first time and they say they want to play games, how quickly do they move from gaming platforms to social media? How quickly do they go from doing research on YouTube for a project or just to watch a video down a rabbit hole to some other dark area of the internet, right? Because as we know, it doesn't take much for kids to get onto sites, even if there's age restrictions, even if there are certain registration requirements. Do you know what they're posting, right? I mean, what we have told kids for years is that it's not necessarily social media that's dangerous. It's obviously what information is being put out online. Okay? What are they sharing? What are they posting? Most social media nowadays obviously has a content creation component or is making kids believe that they can go viral or they can be the next big thing, or one video may be the thing that catapults their social media experience into the next realm. But think about how quickly a child can post something online. I have watched kids in my neighborhood for years. I've watched my own kids and how quickly they post sometimes without thinking, how quickly they are putting things on the internet for people to see, in some cases thinking it's just their friends, only to realize then that that information is being shared with other people as well. And this third question, right? Do you understand the technology? I touched on this a little bit already, but as it changes, as we become a society that relies heavily on technology, do you understand the capabilities? I have presented for 22 years this topic of internet safety. I remember the days of flip phones. I remember the days when, we started seeing more tablets. And I still encounter parents who have a flip phone or who have not adopted the smartphone mentality, which is great. Hey, I would love to go back and have a flip phone. But the reality is if you have a flip phone and your child has the latest and greatest smartphone, are you going to understand what to do? Do you know how they operate? Do you know how they keep track of your kids? And so we really want to lessen that divide, if you will. Okay. I'm not saying that as a parent you need to be creating TikTok videos and streaming and gaming like most kids are today, but I do expect that you would understand how the technology operates and what it's capable of, right? The other important question is your access, right? And I know this seems to be a hot topic for some parents, and I'm not sure why. Parents say, I want to give my kids some privacy. I don't want to be peering over their shoulder all the time. And I can appreciate that. And I tell most parents and grandparents and caregivers, your child should have a password on their device. Your child should have locks and security and ways that keep other people out of their device. I mean, when you think about all of the material that's on that phone, that laptop, that tablet, they should be password protected. But if you don't have access to it, you're setting yourself up for bigger problems down the road, right? I'm going to go out on a limb and say that most of you that have children or grandchildren, those children did not buy the latest and greatest $1,800 iPhone. Okay. You probably paid for it. You probably have the wireless plan. And so it gives you rights, obviously, as an adult, as a parent, as a concerned citizen, to go in and access that device. Okay. And I hope that kids would understand that, right? When we gave our kids a cell phone, one of the first rules was, number one, you're going to always answer the phone when we call you. And number two, like if we want to see the device, we better know how to get into it, right? And your kid might say, I changed the password, right? But then they also might say, well, I forgot what my PIN code is. And we all know that's not true. Okay. We know they're probably hiding something. And so we should be able to get into it, right? You can add your own fingerprint, your own face, your own pattern to a device to allow you to sort of ride shotgun, if you will, with your child as they move forward on this digital journey or this information superhighway. And I think the most important question really is, who else has access to your children or your grandchildren? Right? Think about that for a second. Are you talking to your kids about the dangers that exist on the internet? When they have issues in their real lives, who are they turning to? Okay? One of the biggest problems that we see is this fallacy of how many friends someone has, how many followers, how many likes, how many subscribers. Social media wants us to believe that our feeds, our algorithms will work better when we have more friends. But what we seem to want to impress upon children is that, one person you don't know is a digital stranger. And kids will readily admit that they would never walk up to some stranger out in public and start rattling off personal information, where they live, what they like. But on the internet, it's a completely different story. They look at friend requests and say, okay, I know this person. Their name sounds familiar. They have a friend of a friend. They look like they have things in common. They just look cool. Let's friend them. And then that's where we start to see some of these issues, because obviously that person can be anybody they want to be on the internet. I spent the first 5 years of my career posing as a 13-year-old female on the internet. And it led to the arrest of more than 60 individuals who thought they were traveling to a physical location to meet a minor child for sex. I never talked on the phone to them. I had some photos that I would use that made me look like a female or purported to be me as a female. But back then it was a lot easier. And now we're dealing with location services, and we're dealing with the requirement that most offenders will say, send me a picture, send me a new picture, send me a video, right? And so we are seeing more kids who are becoming victimized by people that they don't necessarily know in the real world, right? A lot of sexual abuse happens with people that children know, but in the internet world, there's a different slant to it, where a lot of times they're meeting people they don't know because they're looking for support. They're having issues with family members, friends, and they turn to people that can offer them, unsolicited advice, and sometimes make them feel better. It wasn't uncommon when I was undercover online where I would get gifts from offenders because I would tell them a sob story and they would turn around and send a gift to make me feel better, in which case I would, reciprocate and say, oh, that makes me feel great. And the next thing you know, they're wanting to meet and engage in sexual activity. So that's that grooming process that we've talked about for quite some time. Now, we've sort of touched on this already. Like I said earlier, I wish we could go back to the flip phone. I threatened to give my own kids a flip phone one day and was dismayed to find out that they didn't make them anymore. So, um, but again, like we need to understand what this technology is. Now we're seeing virtual reality. Now we're seeing artificial intelligence. We're seeing bigger phones, faster phones. We're moving away from the desktop, the laptop computers. Um, and it's just imperative that we kind of understand the technology. Also, your problem is the idea that we need to kind of understand, and I said this earlier, understand where our kids are at. All right. Now, if we were together in person, you would look at this like an eye chart, right? And I usually will single somebody out in the audience and see if anyone knows all of these icons that you see here. And like an eye chart, right? They get easy from the top, they get a little harder when you reach the bottom. But I know most of you, without a doubt, um, no Facebook, no Instagram, right? Those are your go-to apps as adults. And if we have some young folks in the room today, maybe it's X, certainly TikTok, Snapchat. We use Google for a number of services, and we use Microsoft on a daily basis as well. Okay. Second row, you've got Amazon Photos, you have Roblox, gaming platform. You have Kick Messenger, which is a private chat group. You have cloud storage providers like Dropbox, Pinterest, which we equate with crafting and creative ideas, is there in the red P. WhatsApp in the green icon with the white kind of speech bubble, and then Reddit on the second row, last icon, kind of a posting or a threads type of a site, asking opinions, posting news. It's when we get to the bottom row that we start to see some kind of things that we may not recognize, right? So, Pink Heart is Badu. It's a dating slash meet site. The smiley face is Meet Me. Discord is in the middle there. That is a gaming platform, a streaming platform. You have Imgur, which is a image hosting platform with the green arrow. And then the last one there is Twitch. That's also more of a gaming streaming type of platform. Why are these your problem? For the simple fact that the 43,000 tips that we got last year, the vast majority of them come from an electronic service provider that you see on the screen in front of you. Okay. Every single presentation that we do, parents ask us, where do I need to keep my kids away from, or where do I need to be concerned about? And I think a lot of parents would like to hear about adult sites. They'd like to hear about the dark web. They'd like to hear about the seedy, dangerous corners of the internet. The reality is that these are the problem areas of the internet, right? Now, most kids will tell you that if you have Facebook, you're old. I've heard it every day for the last 20 years, right? As long as Facebook's been around, there was a brief time where kids used it, and then we got on it and kids disappeared. And that's the trend, right? Kids went to Instagram, and then we got on Instagram. Kids went to Snapchat, and then we sort of found our way to Snapchat. And I say this in jest, but I mean it sincerely. If you really want to get your kids or your grandkids off the internet, start making TikTok videos as a parent, because nothing embarrasses your kids more than making a TikTok video and then following them and then seeing their reaction to it. Okay. So that seems to be what we're seeing right now. I know that in a few months, a year, these may be different icons up here. Kids move at a lightning speed to the sites, the apps that are most popular to them. And then we sort of see that kind of where we're trailing behind in terms of law enforcement to keep up, or as parents to understand what it is we need to know. Now, if you come across an application, right? Google is your best friend. Okay. AI is your best friend, because we are now in a world where it's very easy to say, I just found an icon on my kid's device. It's a yellow square with a white ghost. Google's going to tell you what that is, right? AI is going to tell you what that is. You probably could take a picture of the icon with your phone and let that photo figure out what it is you're looking at. I just did that the other day in the field. We had a new app that I had never seen before. I took a picture of it. Google Lens, which is one of the Google services, told me exactly what it was. And then not only that, it then took me to the Google Play Store, where if you really kind of drill down, you're going to see everything you need to know about that app or that icon, right? Here's Snapchat. This is the kind of Snapchat download screen. I know it's hard to see in the corner there, but it talks about data safety, right? Are you reading the terms of service? Are you reading the permissions that that app gives to your children before you allow them to have it, right? What does it share? What is it capable of? What does the app access? And then what can people that interact with your child on that application, what can they do? And what can they see with regards to what your child is using? So I strongly advise if you're seeing some of these applications, right, just Google them or put them into your preferred search engine. You're going to find a lot of good information with regards to what the app is capable of and whether or not it's something that might be of concern to you with regards to your children. Now, I showed you a lot of numbers earlier, and obviously, as I said, most of the tips that we get come from the electronic service providers. They're mandated to report. Children are on their platforms. So again, it's that perfect storm that we talked about. But what doesn't really tell the story in this slide is the fact that most of our cases don't come from TikTok, Snapchat, Instagram. They may produce the most cyber tips here in Ohio, and other states are no different, right? Because these platforms have a lot of children. They have a lot of users in general, but they don't always produce the greatest reports for us to go out and initiate a criminal investigation or a warrant that leads to a prosecution. It's the Googles that produce some of the greatest tips. You'll see Kick down there in the lower right corner, which is considered, they have it as a gaming image sharing site. It's more of a private messaging site. And so users will gravitate there. They will vet each other. They will enter into private groups and they will share child sexual abuse material. Most of our cases, most of our good cases come from Kick as a platform. We see a lot of good stuff from from X. We're seeing more cases with Discord and Roblox because of the ability for kids to communicate with other children or potential offenders. But just because a company submits a lot of tips doesn't necessarily mean those tips are actionable or good. So we've really tried to narrow our focus to some of the other platforms where we know some of the more serious offenders will hang out. Now, we've done a lot over the years with some of the statistics that we've seen out of the National Center. The cyber tips tell us a lot of good detail. And the reason that we are seeing child sexual abuse material as such the problem is because most offenders nowadays want new content. Child sexual abuse imagery and videos is nothing new. It's been around for the last 3 decades. As long as offenders have had the ability to create or memorialize their abuse, whether it's through a Polaroid or digital film or smartphones to where we are now, there has always been illegal content or contraband. But as more children got online, as technology got better, and as the quality of this material got better, offenders started looking for new content because the old stuff just wasn't doing it for them. And that's right around the same time that we started seeing kids sort of being married to this new technology, right? There's not a phone on the market today that doesn't have a camera or a video camera built into it. And so we have children who are curious. We have children who are pressured. And offenders know that. And that's why that content sort of interest, if you will, is so high. Now, yes, there are offenders who want to meet and groom children for sexual activity. So that is obviously still a concern for us. And one of the things that is changing with this slide is that financial piece. And we'll talk about sextortion. We'll talk about the reality that in sextortion world, it's not about the material. It's simply about using the material as leverage for financial gain. Okay, so I expect that sort of column to grow there over the years here, where we see more and more kids fall victim to sextortion or enticement type of offenses. But as long as kids have technology, we have that serious concern of them creating material, being enticed to create material. Um, and then offenders who can obviously continue to abuse children and create more graphic material, more high quality material. It's obviously going to increase that 60% number as well. If you remember no other number, I want you to remember this one. All right. 462 million is the number of images and videos that sit in a repository in Virginia at the National Center that contain child sexual abuse imagery or videos. Okay. These are images that have been collected over the years from the cyber tips. These are media files that have been submitted to NECMEC. Because children who are being abused have been identified, or just simply because these are the files that have been found on the computers of the suspects that we have gone out and arrested and prosecuted. And that number continues to grow. And many of these kids, many of these victims are still unidentified to this day. So, as I said earlier, our focus is really twofold: arresting offenders, getting them off the streets, but then also removing the media from their devices, and then the effort of trying to identify some of the victims in that media. And there's no question that we have an image problem, right? This slide's a few years old, but if you Google the word sexting right now, you're probably going to find a lot of articles on what it is and how to do it. Okay. Now, if you're an adult, and I get this question all the time from kids in high school, and I'm always concerned about it. And they say, well, when I turn 18, can I send nude photos? And the honest answer to that is yes. It's no longer a crime. Certainly a bad idea. We know that photo is going to appear somewhere else down the road, but kids are learning about this from sites like Cosmopolitan and Glamour. And perhaps the worst result that I've ever seen is that WebMD result, right? What it is and how to do it safely. Okay. Now, if you've been online long enough, you know that the golden rule of medical advice online is never go to WebMD for any good medical advice, right? But I'm concerned that companies and sites and places are telling people how to do it safely, because I don't believe there really is a way to sext safely, right? But our kids are seeing that. I watch a lot of illegal videos every day where I see teenagers who are creating a video, sometimes illegal, sometimes not. And I'm surprised at how many times I see a younger brother or sister or a sibling, cousin in the room with them, watching what they're doing, mimicking what they're doing, right? I see a lot of videos now where it's groups of children who are at a sleepover, who are just having fun or thinking they're having fun, talking to random people, following whatever it is they tell them to do. And then that material is being recorded and then pushed back out onto the internet. And if that's not enough of a problem, we've now turned a corner with regards to deepfakes, AI generated material. Okay. Now, one of the things I always tell parents, grandparents, caregivers, is all the stuff we've talked about up until now. I want you to go and try for yourself. I want you to go on the applications. I want you to download some of these social media sites, right? Maybe you start video gaming, which we'll talk about here in a second. The one thing I don't want you to do is try these nude generators. Okay. There is a lot of unknowns about how AI models work. There are a lot of unknowns about what happens to your photo when you push it into a tool like you see here. And there are a lot of them, right? But essentially, you upload a photo fully clothed, and then this program will do the rest, and it will essentially nudify, as they call it, your photograph. Now, as you as AI gets better, as more people add photos into these generators, into these AI programs, the model gets better. And that's why we're seeing some of the quality that we're seeing now. We're seeing this application called Sora that is creating videos from stock images. We're seeing things that we're going to have a hard time believing as the technology continues to increase. And one of the problems with regards to AI is that if kids are smart enough to not share a nude photo, they're um, their innocent photos, their selfies, their photos that they're posting on Instagram may then be used against them to create these deep fakes or these AI nudes, if you will. And here's an example, right? I was in Florida few months ago, and I ran into Taylor Swift. Who would have known outside of my daughter's college, right? And then I was at the Cavs playoffs a few years back, and I ran into LeBron, right? But I mean, we know that didn't happen. I mean, it might have, but the reality is that I basically took a photo of myself and my wife in both cases, and I said, "Hey, put Taylor Swift next to me." Now, I thought the program would simply just take Taylor and make her in a sequin outfit coming off of one of her Eras tours. But basically, it just put her head on my wife's body. So that's my wife's skirt. That's her tank top. She's got a smartwatch there. I don't think I've ever seen Taylor Swift wear a smartwatch, but it was that easy. And it happened within less than 30 seconds. Okay. You can't tell the difference between where the head starts and ends. It didn't do anything with the background. Same with the LeBron photo. My wife was in that photo as well. Now, most people look at that and they say, there's no way you're as tall as LeBron James, or LeBron James is as short as you are. And that's the dead giveaway there, right? That he should be a lot taller than I am, because I certainly don't have a career in pro basketball. But it's just amazing how easy it is for this material to be created. And obviously, this is a innocent use of it. But what if I said, create a nude of the woman in that picture? Or what if I had a picture of a child and I attempted to manipulate it for financial or sexual gratification? Okay. There's the real photo right there. You kind of see just how easily it moves that over. A year or two ago, the background would have been blurred. There would have been a lot of quality loss in terms of going from the real photo to the fake photo, but it would obviously do its job in terms of fooling somebody. And I see it every day where someone really has to look at a photo and say, I can't tell, when it's especially somebody that's like a family member, or a potential victim that we are interacting with. Connections, we've talked about this a little bit, and some of this has changed over time, but I was just out at a high school this morning. I was talking to 800 kids about, you should never answer your phone if you don't know who it is. You should never answer a text message, right? I hear kids who say, well, yeah, I got a text message, and I just figured I'd answer it and I'd have a conversation with somebody. Okay. But sooner or later, there's going to be a request for something. There's going to be a link, right? And so we're pushing back against the idea that if you don't know who it is, let it go to voicemail. Let it go unanswered as a text message, right? Unless it's your mom, your dad, your grandparents, somebody important that's in your contacts. That's the only time we really want you to answer the phone or answer a text message. The picture on the left there, and this is something that a lot of adults don't necessarily know about, but every photo you take, if you have your location services turned on, your photos are going to have a lot of data that's embedded in them there, okay, including, and you see it at the bottom there, the lower left corner, that's the address of my house. I've blacked out the number and the street, but because my location services are turned on, I have what's called EXIF, EXIF data that is embedded in the photo that is then out there for someone to read. So let's say for an instance that I send this photo to somebody I'm talking to, I don't tell them where I live. They can basically take that photo and learn what kind of phone I have. They can learn, like the name of the photo, the date that it was taken, right? And more importantly, where I'm located at when I take that photo. And so, again, kids are talking to potential offenders. They're sending pictures. They hide their face. They obscure certain details. The offender may still be able to figure out where that picture is taken. And I think what we've really started to see here, as we move into 2026, for the last few years, it's been all about going live. It's been all about streaming. Okay, we see more problems on YouTube than I care to admit, and most of those problems are kids who are 5 to 8 years of age. Parents have given them a tablet. That tablet is signed in to the parent account, and then the child gravitates from watching videos one day to making videos. And it's really that easy. If you look at the YouTube app, it's a plus sign, it's a go live. It's a plus sign, it's a create a short or a post. Okay. And there's not a week that goes by that we don't go out here in Cuyahoga County where we basically are advising parents, did you know what your son or daughter just posted online? And most times they don't. And the child comes out from the bedroom. We have a very stern adult-like conversation, unfortunately, where the child cries, parent yells, and we hope we never come back again. And I hope in some cases that it's a child who is being enticed or harassed or threatened to do this, but 9 times out of 10, it's a child who is making poor choices, who has seen something online and decided, I want to be popular, I want to be creative. And oftentimes they find the wrong way to do that, believing that it's going to get them these likes, these views, and these subscribers. And the other thing I want you to pay attention to is the reality that gaming is a significant jumping off point with regards to the offenders that we deal with, right? These characters you see here, Among Us, Fortnite, Minecraft, Roblox, right? We've got the PlayStation, we've got Xbox, we have your mobile devices that provide you games as well. But there are not many games anymore where all you do is play the game. A lot of it is about connections, right? If you play Words with Friends, you can talk to that other player or that stranger. My son used to play a game where he would build like a little kingdom. And as part of the clan, he could talk to the other players there. Didn't know who they were, didn't know where they were, but he would start a conversation with them. Now, we don't see a lot of victimization on these gaming platforms unless it's strictly a chat conversation, like some of the problems we've seen lately with Roblox and the Minecraft server. But more often than not, the victimization is going to occur on another platform. The offender is going to say, hey, when we're done playing Fortnite, give me your email, give me your phone number, give me your username on Instagram. We can go have a private conversation. And the child incorrectly assumes that, okay, this guy's pretty cool because he must play video games and he's not a danger. And so I'm going to continue to have a conversation with him. And we see time and time again where we have offenders who are victimizing children. We have children who are being enticed to create material. Now, how do we prevent the problem? These are my 3 Ps. Okay, the first one is privacy, right? I want children to be more private. I want you to also really understand that, like, while there should be some privacy in what your children do online, there also needs to be a lot of oversight, right? I want there to be a password. I want them to understand the concerns about not giving out personal information. But as I said earlier, you also need access. You need to make sure that, they're being private with regards to the things that they do online. I tell kids all the time too that the second P is a simple one, right? And kids don't do this enough. And this is where parents really need to step in and take care of this, is just power the device down or just take a break, right? That's essentially what that's saying there. I tell students all the time, if you're in a situation that's problematic, if you're being enticed, if you're being asked for nude photos, close the lid, turn the device off, set it down, turn it over and set it down for a second. Allow yourself to think about what's going on and then go seek some help, right? But too often Kids are so addicted to their devices, and even some parents are, that we never have once turned our device off unless we absolutely need to sort of refresh it or correct some kind of problem. And the last one, and this is difficult at times, right, is the reality that we need to be parents when it comes to technology. We need to have rules. We need to set boundaries, expectations, right? If I'm going to give my kid the latest and greatest technology, I want them to understand the concerns and the risks that are out there. Now, what's difficult about that is that research suggests that most kids are having a fairly positive experience on the internet. Sure, they are seeing some things they don't want to see. Most of them are not falling victim to exploitation. They're not talking to people they don't know. But all the more reason why we need to parent correctly in terms of just talking to them about some of the problems that are out there. Maybe they never happened to them, but we obviously need to highlight some of these concerns, and that needs to come from us because, as I've said for years, if you're not talking to your kids about this, it's probably going to be an offender. It's probably going to be someone that they have found online that they feel more comfortable about talking about these issues. And if you don't do it for yourself, I want you to do it for James Woods. Okay. In November of 21, James Woods, 17-year-old from Streetsboro, you see him there. He was a track star. He was a straight A student. He took his own life less than 24 hours after he started a conversation online with someone that he thought was another 17-year-old female on Instagram. And within 10 minutes, this female had sent James a nude photo, and James reciprocated. And the rest of the time that he was alive, the next 18 to 20 hours, James spent pleading with this offender, who ultimately said, "I'm not a 17-year-old, to not release this photo." James paid money to keep its release from happening. They turned around and said, "You're going to pay more." And James ultimately, as I said, tragically took his own life. And what makes the story even more hard to hear is that on the day that he died, he was walking around a college fair with his mother, who you see there, who now spends her time with her husband traveling around the country, testifying in front of Congress to make sure that this does not happen again. And James joins a list of some 36 to 40 young men and women that we know about who have lost their lives to sextortion. And what's so concerning about this epidemic is that it's happening too quick for us to get involved as law enforcement. By the time James died, we didn't even know this had happened. James's parents struggled to figure it out in the days that followed. And thankfully, because of the Streetsboro Police Department, they were able to get into his device, and we were able to figure out what it is that happened. And so I suspect there are a lot of kids who have taken their lives who have not left a note, whose phone was not accessible. And we are seeing this happen way too much in the last few years. And so we've done a lot more with regards to education and a victim focus to make sure that this doesn't happen again. The conversations you see here, four of more than 200 messages that James endured. These offenders have very little regard for human life. And as I said earlier, their main focus is all about getting paid. The photo is simply a means to an end. It's a leverage point to where the offender says, "Pay me $20 and this goes away. Pay me $100. And so what we're telling a lot of kids nowadays, and this sort of goes contrary to what we've told them in the past, is that we want you to just stop communicating. We want you to block the conversation, delete the conversation, do what you need to do to get yourself out of this situation. Because once you send that image, there's no pleading, there's no talking, there's nothing you say that's going to get these offenders to stop communicating unless you just simply walk away from it. And we've started to see more kids who have said that. We had a report not too long ago where a young man said, I sent the nude, I knew it was wrong, I blocked the user, and I just left the conversation. He never saw the photo pop up. He didn't report that anyone else ever saw it. And that's the reality, is that a lot of these offenders are overseas in Nigeria, Ivory Coast, the Philippines. For them, this is a business. And so if they don't get victims who play ball, they're going to move on. And they're going to continue to do it until they find someone that will pay and pay and pay over and over again. Okay. Now, what do we do, right, as we sort of try and wrap up here? And I know I've thrown a lot at you. One of the best things that you can do is these cyber tips at the cyber tip line. So the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children runs the cyber tip line, report.cybertip.org. You can find it by either that URL or by Googling NCMEC, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. You provide as much or as little information as you have, and they will submit the report. The report will come to us if you live in Ohio or the suspect is in Ohio. It'll go to one of the other 60 ICACs if you believe the victim or the suspect are in another state. If you become aware of content involving your child, your grandchild, if you're a caregiver to a child, the National Center has a lot of resources for steps to remove content from various platforms. The problem, obviously, is that you need to do it in each instance. Okay, so removing something from Google doesn't necessarily remove it from TikTok. And so there's a process for each one of these as well. More recently, the National Center has unveiled a program for kids. And so I think this is one of the kind of best resources I've seen in a long time. The Take It Down program is exactly what it sounds like. The child will submit their nude photo digitally. It creates a digital signature of the file. That digital signature is then sent to the National Center. The National Center will then distribute that kind of fingerprint, if you will, to all of the companies that are taking part in the Take It Down program. And so NECMEC will say to Instagram, to Snapchat, to TikTok, please look for this photo on your platform. And if you find it, take it down, as the name suggests. So since December of 22, 567,000 files essentially have been submitted. And it's resulted in about 280,000 reports where files have been found, files have been removed from the internet. Because one less file online of child sexual abuse material goes a long way to solving this problem. Now, again, as I said, I know that was a lot of information. And so we are on Facebook, X, we have a website. The irony of that is certainly not lost on me, but it's a great way for us to deliver information as well. The main number that you see there gets you right to our task force headquarters. You can find me online as well, and I'm always willing to, answer additional questions. If we have some questions now, certainly can, kind of field some of those. If you think of something later, I would certainly welcome the opportunity to come back or answer your questions at a later date. So, Ivory?
Thank you. Thank you so much. If nobody has any questions, I was blown away initially when I saw this presentation, and it was 6 months ago, probably August. And to look at the amount of information that has evolved since then, only a couple of months ago, is wow, that's amazing. So thank you so much, David. I really appreciate it. Before you all leave, please do not leave. Please do not leave. If you could hold tight for just a minute. I want to thank you for your time, your attention, and your willingness to engage in such an important conversation. Before you head out, we have just a brief post-event survey that I'd love for you to complete. It only takes a minute, and your feedback truly helps us strengthen our future workshops to ensure that we're meeting the needs of our community. So please don't just log off. Stay with us for a minute, and that link to the link to the post-event survey is in your chat. You can find it there. And your voice is genuinely taken into consideration, and it does make a difference. So thank you again for taking your time to be with us tonight. I'll go ahead and put it in the chat again, so that it won't get lost. And a lot of you are typing. I'll put it in again just so that it won't get lost. Go ahead and click on that link for me so that you will be able to complete our survey. And we'd love to continue to provide programming that you all would like to see and hear. Thanks again and appreciate you. Yes, so David does do school presentations. If you would like him to come to um, whatever whatever you need him in what capacity school presentations. I initially met him at my church. I'm a youth minister at my church, and he did a presentation for us for our youth leaders. I mean our youth program. So they do presentations for whatever you may need. So definitely jot down his information if you feel like this information could be a benefit to your organization and the children that you touch on an everyday basis. So definitely stay in contact with them. Thank you, thank you. I appreciate you all. Free of charge. Yes, absolutely. The goal is to get the information out to as many people as possible so we could save our kids. That was unfortunate. That's unfortunate when it results in death. So, Lakeisha, yes, most definitely. Lakeisha Harris, come off mute.
Okay, everybody. A lot of people on here already know me. I work for Cleveland Division of Police, and currently I am working with the missing persons unit. I have a really, really big issue with first-time runaways that the parents say, "I never thought my child would run away," but they have no social media information on their child. They don't know their name, or they got into an argument that quick and they blocked the parents. So if the best thing you can do is get your kid's social media name and or friends info. Know where they're going for the weekend. Know whose house they're going to. Because though we need that information when your child run away.
Absolutely. Thank you, Lakeisha. Absolutely. All right. If everybody received their link, no one has any other questions. I am here